guys, it's Mrs. Butler. Today we're going to be showing you guys how to structure a paragraph using the claim-data-warrant format that we've already learned. Alright, so the first thing you're going to always do is make a clear claim and a topic sentence. You're going to answer the prompt question. So whatever the prompt is, you're going to answer it in the question, but be sure you're not saying "in my opinion" or "I think." Then you're going to introduce your first piece of data, your evidence, with a sentence that gives it context. Here's what I mean by that. And I'm going to show you an example as well. If you just plunked a quote from the text into your essay without explaining what the story is or what the situation is in the story when this happened, your reader won't understand what you're talking about. So you have to give a sentence or even a part of sentence or even a phrase sometimes to give it a little bit of context. Then you're going to include your first piece of data. In language arts, this is often a quote from the text. If you are doing a documentary or a film, you might reference a specific, but if you are doing a novel, you would reference a quote. So your first piece of data is going to be a quote. Then you introduce your second piece of data, giving it a little bit of context to explain the situation that where this quote came from. And then you're going to have your second piece of data. Finally, you're going to conclude the entire thing with a warrant sentence, tying your data to the original claim. It's a sentence with words like since, therefore, because. Remember, I have warrant starters up on the poster, so you should take a look at those. So here's the way the pattern works. It's the claim, your topic sentence, your data intro, which gives it some context, your data, the actual quote or specific from a film or specific from a fact, something like that. Introduce your second piece of data, give your second piece of data, and then tie it all together with the warrant. But wait, Miss Butler, how do I do all of that? How do I turn that into a paragraph? Well, I'm going to show you, and I've given you a model too in a handout. So I've given you the other sheet on one side, and on the back side is the model. So first thing you need to know is you always need to use an MLA heading. I have one stuck up on the board today that you guys can model on the whiteboard, and also I put one here. You're always going to have your name, my name, or whatever teacher it is, your class period, and your date. And always center your title. In this case, I'm doing a paragraph about Billy Weaver and the landlady. So notice that I've used different fonts. I've used that kind of and given you a key below to show you the different parts, the claim, the data intro, the data, and the warrant. But as you remember in the landlady, Billy Weaver was very, very trusting and ended up getting himself stuffed. So I've decided to make a claim that Billy Weaver was extremely naive and trusting. So the way that I've done that is, first of all, I've referenced the story. It's always a good idea to say in the story or in the novel or in the film or in the documentary. So, but in this case, in the story, The Landlady by Roald Dahl, the character Billy Weaver is extremely naive and trusting. All right. So I've gone in and I've found a couple of quotes to show that he's overly naive and trusting. So naive means sort of unsophisticated, not very worldly. So I went in and found a couple of quotes. After I'd found my quotes, then I needed to use a way to incorporate them. So the first thing I did is I had to introduce the piece of data. So the first piece of data I found was when he answered the door, and it said, "This dame was like a jack-in-the-box. He pressed the bell and out she popped." That's the actual quote from the story with a page number. But before that, I need to introduce the piece of data. So in this case, it says, first, when he arrives at the boarding house, he does not seem particularly alarmed by the fact that the woman seemed to be watching him behind the door, noting that, and here's where the quote comes in, quote, "This dame was like a jack-in-the-box. He pressed the bell and out she popped." So I haven't just dumped the quote in there because otherwise my reader wouldn't have any idea what had happened in the story. I had to give it a little bit of context. So that's what I did. Then I go on to my second piece of data, and I need to introduce it first. So I go to a second quote, and before that I would say, in addition, he noticed that she acted a little crazy, but continued to see the landlady as harmless. So again, I've given it a little context. Notice that she thought he was kind of crazy, but he didn't seem to care about it. So he observed the fact that his landlady appeared to be slightly off her rocker didn't worry Billy in the least. After all, she was not only harmless, there was no question about that, but she was also quite obviously a kind and generous soul. Of course, we know that she was not, so the fact that he thought that shows that he is naive. Notice I've put the page number. Then I've tied both ideas together with the warrant. Since Billy remained unafraid, despite the odd behavior of the landlady, he is too trusting of strangers and a bit unsophisticated. So this is a good model for you for when you are doing your claim data warrant paragraph. So you're going to have a claim sentence that states the work that you're discussing. Then you're going to introduce your first piece of data, your first statistic, your first quote, your first specific. If you're talking about a movie or a film, you could just use a specific from the story. And then you go on to the second piece of data, introducing as well, and then tie it all together with the warrant. Remember, it's just one paragraph. You guys can do this. I totally have faith in you.